This is Fans on the Run, a podcast made by, for, and about Beatles fans. And now, here's your host, Alexanian.
Welcome back to Fans on the Run, the most profound Beatles podcast. Profound for what reasons, I don't know. But here we are. It's another week. I assume there's going to be some snow out. There is no snow right now. There was snow. I was really sad when the snow went away. See, mystery guest, this is what happens when I start the show. I go into a delusional, rambling, senile monologue until I decide it's not worth it.
I've based a whole career on that.
Well, we're two peas from the same pod. Which, pun intended, yes. But anyways, I don't know why I do the whole mystery guest shtick. It's not like you can see his name in the title and the graphic and all that stuff. It's you know, I need to reevaluate this show. But that's for another day. We have a great guest for you today. If you're in New York, you can hear him 10 p.m. to midnight weekdays and 1 to 4 p.m. on Saturdays on WFUV.
That's right.
WFUV, and he is the co-host of the fellow podcast Things We Said Today. Darren DeVivo, welcome to Fans on the Run.
Thanks for having me, Ethan. I appreciate it, and I got pretty excited when you started talking about snow. I'm a little south of you, just outside of New York City, and we've only seen a few wet snowflakes so far. But today, the day we're recording this, our temperatures went into the 70s again, and it's supposed to feel like spring, I think, for most of the week coming up.
That's the same up here right now. It's not fun. There was a morning where it was beautiful. It looked like a winter wonderland, and then by the afternoon, it had all melted. It's like, right. Oh, okay, wow, that was a really anticlimactic 24 hours.
Right. Yeah, that wet snow that disappears as soon as the sun comes out.
Are you pro-snow or against snow?
Very pro-snow.
Thank you.
I'm pro-snow. I love the snow. Not nuts when I have to do a lot of shoveling. And unfortunately, I've got two pretty bad knees from taking two separate serious falls at home down the stairs. So walking in snow and icy conditions is always a little dicey for me, but I still prefer winter and very much prefer snowfall. Yes. Keep it under a foot or so, but give me a bunch of significant snowfalls that don't go beyond a foot, and I'm happy.
Because if you end up with about 6 feet of snow, like sometimes happens, it's just not pleasant.
Yeah, I've never experienced anything like that. I think the worst was in the vicinity of 2 feet in New York City, and very possibly the last one of like that was at the time I was doing morning drive at WFUV, 6 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. So this was probably late, I think it was like the late 90s. And it was a little eerie walking through. I'm originally from the Bronx in New York City, so walking through the streets in the middle of the street because you couldn't walk anywhere else on the sidewalks. There was so much snow, and hoping. I didn't even know if buses were running. I normally drive everywhere I go, but that morning, walking a couple of blocks to where a bus might stop, was actually a good memory, but at the time was a little hairy. So I think about 2 feet of snow was the most I've ever experienced.
I want to make an on-air retraction. I said 6 feet of snow, and then I realized how much snow that actually is. And then I remembered, okay, so no, that's never happened here.
Okay, good.
Okay. It's, you Americans and your metric system. Oh, no, your imperial system.
No, your metric.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called.
Isn't it like the imperial system? Whatever.
If you say so.
Yeah.
When I was in elementary school in the 70s, there was leanings towards going metric in the U.S., and we were learning the metric system, and it just seemed to just go away at some point, and that was the end of that. So it's degrees, inches, feet, miles on my end.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of frustrating sometimes driving. Well, I don't drive, but when I'm in the car, because in Canada it's kilometers,
Right,
and so
right.
you can see on like the signs as you're driving past the road, like, okay, Toronto, 30 kilometers away. So you can say in your head, okay, so 30 minutes away. Like it's about
okay.
a kilometer a minute most of the time. But in the States, it's, miles, and I have no idea what's going on. So if it says like, oh, New York City, 50 miles, it's like, well, that could take anywhere between 30 minutes and 4 hours.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how far that is.
It's the same here. I've been in Ontario a number of times, and almost all the time driving, and it's like, how far do we have to go? I don't know. Whatever that says, that's how far we have to go as we pass the sign. So, but it's you figure it out, and at least you're driving on the correct side of the road like we do in the U.S. as opposed to, say, in the U.K., where they drive the wrong way. I'm just joking. All our friends in the UK. I'm just kidding.
I'm not joking. We drive on the right side of the road. Yeah. You can say face. I don't have to. Yeah. This show's a dumpster fire, and I go down with it. So, anyways, I want to jump right back to the beginning. How did you first discover the Beatles?
It's funny. I don't know. I don't know what it was that turned me on to the Beatles. There's two of the things I'm extremely passionate about, and that's music with the Beatles front and center, and baseball with the New York Mets front and center. Why am I a hardcore Beatles fan? Why did I end up a hardcore Mets fan? I don't know. I'm an only child, no brothers and sisters. And my parents weren't big music heads. They really weren't into the Beatles.
Well, wouldn't it have been kind of worlds colliding? I don't know too much about the Mets, but wouldn't they have been the ones who played at Shea Stadium?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, the Mets played at Shea Stadium until the 2008 season was the last.
And now they
built Citi Field next door, right? And McCartney played there in 2009, the first year that that Citi Field was open. Exactly. But as for why I gravitated to the Beatles and the Mets, two big passions, I don't know. Like I said, my parents weren't music heads. They weren't into the Beatles. They were Yankees fans because I'm from the Bronx, and the Bronx is where the Yankees play. The Mets played in Queens.
Well, can you explain to me, as someone who knows very, 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 very little about baseball, other than the Blue Jays are kind of all right.
Yeah, very good team. Up and coming.
What is this rivalry between the Yankees and the Mets? I don't understand it.
It's funny because there is and there isn't a rivalry. When I say there is, when I say there isn't, they don't play each other all that much, and they're in opposite leagues. So the Yankees are in the American League in the East, in the same division as the Blue Jays. The Mets are in the National League in the East. Up until the late 90s when they started interleague play, where National League teams and American League teams would play each other during the regular season and not just meet in the World Series, up until that point, the Mets and Yankees never played each other unless it was, an exhibition game or a spring training game or something. So the rivalry for the Mets and the Yankees is more geographic. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, handful of areas that have more than one team. And in New York City, traditionally there were three baseball teams.
Well,
there was the Yankees,
it was the Brooklyn Dodgers,
right, and the New York Giants. And the New York Giants and the Brooklyn Dodgers both left New York City after the 1957 season and went to California, got the LA Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Mets were created to replace both the Dodgers and the Giants in the National League. And that's why, if you're familiar with the Mets, the team colors are blue and orange. The blue is Dodger blue, the orange is Giants orange. And New York went from 1958 until 1961 with one baseball team, the Yankees, in the American League.
How would they ever survive?
And New York craved National League Baseball again, so the Mets were created to basically fill the void left by the Dodgers and Giants in 1962. So the rivalry was really just geographic. And what ends up happening is, traditionally, the Yankees tend to be the powerhouse team. It hasn't always been the case, but they do tend to be the powerhouse. The Mets are the little brother that gets kicked around a lot. So that helps fuel the rivalry because the fans usually get on each other's case. Mm-hmm. There are very few Met fans who like the Yankees and vice versa. And even though I'm from the Bronx, which is Yankee country, I grew up a Mets fan, and no offense, folks, I can't stand the Yankees. And it's usually the other way around. Yankee fans can't stand the Mets. So that's the deal with that. And I grew up in a household of two parents who were passive Yankee fans. And then I popped up and was attracted to the Mets and the Beatles. And you asked me how I got into the Beatles. Well, I'm not sure, but I can tell you it was probably before I turned 5. Because I turned 5 in March 1970. Mm-hmm. So, and I have recollections of hearing certain songs on the radio when they were hits, like Something and, something from 1969, yes. For example. I had the Hey Jude compilation album, which came out February 70. Mm-hmm. So I was well aware of the Beatles by the time I turned 5 years old. And even from that very young age, they were a passion for me because there was just something about them that even at barely turning 5, I definitely was drawn to them. I saw the Let It Be movie in the theaters I guess it was the summer of 70. I barely remember it, but I do have a snapshot memory of being in the theater with my mother at the Palace Theater in the Parkchester section of the Bronx, watching Let It Be, and I would have been 5 years old. So they grabbed hold of me from a very, very young age.
Well, would you say the Let It Be movie's appropriate for a 5-year-old?
Yeah, why not? I would think it would be boring as heck for a 5-year-old, but sure. I mean, of course, the kids want to see Yellow Submarine, most of them anyway. My daughter loved Yellow Submarine when she was a little baby. My son used to get a little freaked out by it, but yeah, I mean, Let It Be for a 5-year-old, Let It Be is going to be boring, but there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Well, it's been a while since I've seen Let It Be, so I can't remember if, the Beatles are, swearing at each other. Hey,
I don't think so. No, there's none of that.
In fact, why don't you fuck yourself?
Yeah. No, actually, no, there's none of that. And I haven't seen Let It Be from beginning to end. I couldn't even tell you when the last time I saw it. If you're familiar with the Fest for Beatles fans, yes, which used to be Beatlefest, I've been going to those conventions since 1982, and they tended to show the primary movies: A Hard Day's Night, Help, I think Yellow Submarine, and they would show Let It Be. I think they would do maybe one movie in the afternoon and one at night. They don't do it anymore. They don't screen them any longer. But that was probably the last time I saw Let It Be, was at one of the Beatlefest conventions.
Well, that sounds so fun. They weren't doing that at the fest when I went.
No, I don't know if it has any. You know what it does? It probably does have something to do with permission to use the film,
yeah,
licensing and whatnot. That they can no longer do that. But there was a time, and I don't know when it stopped. it stopped, I would make a guesstimate somewhere in maybe the mid-90s that Mark Lapidus, who runs the Fest for Beatle fans,
Shout out to
stopped
Mark.
showing the films. Shout out to Mark. How are you, Mark?
If any of you listeners are interested, I did an episode with Mark Lapidus. So
Mark is a fascinating guy. He's a great guy. Beatlefest attendees, well, actually, the Fest for Beatle fans, the official name.
We
all know the Lapidus family on a first-name basis.
Yeah. So, you kind of touched on this, but I want to ask you again. What was the first Beatle album or Beatle record you remember owning?
Album, like I mentioned, it was Hey Jude. There was like a very thin line in my house. Mm-hmm. I had a phonograph, a little, I think it was a GE, General Electric show and tell phonograph, where I would play my audio storybooks as a kid. And I had a very modest collection of 45s.
Is that
I would play
like the audio storybooks? Were those like the ones that would play at like 16 RPM?
I know what you're talking about. I don't think these did, but I know what you're talking about. Show and tells would be, they would come in like a little, like a pamphlet. It'd have the story in there, and it would have a strip of film that you would put into the player like a television. It was like a little mini TV with a turntable on top. And you would put the film in. It was like a strip. And I guess the stories were narrated and built on, like every 25 seconds, that would be the end of a page. And there would be a tone. And the film would advance to the next frame. So you could watch the TV, the still, drawing, the animation, listen to the story, and it was a record player too. Mm-hmm. So I had Let It Be, not Let It Be. I had the Hey Jude album from me. My dad had the high-tech hi-fi stereo, yes. And he brought home Let It Be and Abbey Road at the same time, and that would have had to have been 1970 because Let It Be was involved. And so he had those two albums, which sometimes I still don't know why he brought them home, because they weren't Beatle fans, my parents, unless it was for me. And a lot of times Dad would stack his turntable with, some of his records. And if one Beatle album was on there, they both were. Abbey Road and Let It Be. They were kind of interchangeable for me. And then I had Hey Jude on my little phonograph, and some singles too. I remember getting Get Back, the Get Back 45. I think my cousin gave me his copy of Something. And in 1970, the current hits, The Long and Winding Road and Let It Be. And a funny story, the B-side of Let It Be, You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, used to scare the crap out of me as a 5-year-old.
Really?
I didn't get it. I didn't understand what the Beatles were doing. I didn't understand who these weird people were yelling at me. The strange music. It always creeped me out. I very rarely played the B-side of the Let It Be single when I was 5 years old. Today, because it's obscure, it's one of my favorite Beatles songs.
Well, I can only imagine it'd be kind of terrifying for a 5-year-old. Imagine if you'd played your 5-year-old self like some of the Beatle Christmas records.
Yeah, at that point, I had never heard the Beatle Christmas records at that point. I often, we talk about this on Things We Said Today, my podcast. We talk about how I was introduced to the Beatles first as solo artists, and then really as a band. I knew those last couple of albums and those last few singles because they were relatively current. But really, for me, I don't know if indoctrination is the right word, but it was the My Sweet Lord single, It Don't Come Easy in 71, Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey in 71, and Power to the People, one from each of them. Mm-hmm. Those were the four that really shut the spotlight was bright, shining brightly for me. Those four singles, and the rest is history.
When you were that young, were you able to kind of, piece it together that these 4 singles were all from Beatles?
Yeah, I was aware they broke up. I don't think I quite comprehended what that meant. But I was aware of the fact that they didn't play together anymore, that they weren't this band, the Beatles, anymore, but yet here were the records, and here's, pictures of them, so therefore they exist, but they don't exist.
Yeah.
I remember one of my cousins, I'm the youngest in my more extended family of all the cousins and everything, and I must have worn it like a badge, even as young as 5 years old, that I was a Beatles fan. And I remember one of my older cousin's friends saying to me, "Oh, the Beatles, they're dead." Meaning they broke up. But
Yeah.
to, a 5 or 6 year old, I mean, it was like I ran to my mother crying. "The Beatles are dead?" No, honey. They just, they broke up. They're not. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Because that bitch said that they were dead. No. I kind of remember hearing that Paul McCartney had a band, Wings, but it didn't totally add up, but I wasn't clueless.
Yeah. Plus, if you looked at the records on your little phonograph, you might have noticed that they all had the same picture of the apple.
Yeah. That was another weird thing for me, was that, and it actually helped push me into my career of working in radio indirectly, but even from the first singles that I had, I was always mesmerized by the 45s and the label designs, and to this day I can see a label from across the room and tell you that's Elektra Records. That was the label design that they were using in the late 60s before they went blah, 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 blah. And that apple, there's something magical about that apple spinning on the turntable, and who knows, it could be that really captured my fancy and made this whole thing happen for me.
Yeah.
And I remember even the non-Beatles singles that I had. I could tell you what labels, record companies they were on, and the design of the label. It burned itself into my memory.
Out of
and that love
curiosity,
of records and music, still thrives today.
Out of curiosity, what were some of those other singles, and what labels were they? Because I'm a record nerd too, so I'm getting a kick out of this.
So, all right, so you got to go back now basically to maybe a couple of hits from 69.
Okay.
Most of them 70, 71, some 72. We're talking about, I used to like the Carpenters, and they were on A&M Records.
Yeah, so that was like the Olive label with the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're right, the original A&M label. I liked Three Dog Night. They were on ABC Dunhill, a black label. I still... When I see the ABC and ABC Dunhill labels, I'm like, that's cool. I couldn't tell you why, but that's cool. And what else? I have a lot of kind of like novelty bubblegum kind of the band Bread, Baby I'ma Want You on Elektra Records just popped into my head. So that's just a handful of many.
Would that have been the Caterpillar?
Yeah, the singles, I believe, were the Caterpillar. The LPs had the full-blown Butterfly.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know if that was standard. I don't know if the Butterflies ever turned up on the singles. I think they did, because I also had a few years later Queen's Killer Queen, and I think that had a Butterfly on the Elektra label, even though it was a single. Dad had the albums. Dad had the Judy Collins albums that had the Elektra label that had the Butterfly. I had Bread's Baby I'ma Want You with the little caterpillar crawling on the E.
So, I want to fast forward a couple years. How did you really, really become, like a hardcore Beatle fan?
It was it was more so hardcore Wings fan.
Wings fan?
Because as I grew up, by the time I was 10, the Beatles were everywhere. The Beatles.
Yeah.
Wings were everywhere. 9 years old, even. I mean, and being a radio junkie, and it was all AM radio, very little FM yet for me. It was impossible to not have the, one of the New York City AM radio stations playing the hits. It was almost impossible to go any extended period of time without hearing Junior's Farm, Jet, Helen Wheels, My Love, and then in 75, listen to what the man said. So, because they were current and they were huge and they were all over the place, Wings were my band. They were it. The sun rose and set on Wings. The Beatles were secondary, and I was forming my tastes and my knowledge and discovering all of the Beatles music as the 70s progressed. Mm-hmm. And it was usually Christmas time. Santa Claus would bring me, that was when I usually got my mother load of Beatle albums, mm-hmm. which was my mother knowing I liked the Beatles and having a general sense of what I didn't own. Each Christmas I'd get a bunch of Beatle albums. Mm-hmm. And that's how I learned, kind of, going back. That's how I learned what Rubber Soul, what Yesterday and Today, what the Beatles' second album, what Beatles 6 and Beatles 65 were. Mm-hmm. And then the current stuff was Venus and Mars, Wings at the Speed of Sound, etc.
Well, and I can only imagine for like someone, getting all the records in the 70s, that would have been a good time, even though we look back on it now as cheap Capitol Records cash grabs. The mm-hmm. rock and roll music, love songs, rarities, all that kind of stuff.
Those were massive for me. Those were because they were double albums and had lots of songs on them. Mm-hmm. Those were major players in educating myself about the Beatles, especially the earlier stuff. And the Blue Album. I had the Blue Album first, 67 to 70. Mm-hmm. And then got the Red Album on cassette. I think I bought that with my allowance or something. Those albums, you're glad you pointed them out, especially rock and roll music and love songs, which I got when they were brand new, like they were the Beatles' new album.
Yeah.
And they played a major part in turning me on to kind of deeper album cuts from albums that I was either just learning about or didn't know anything about yet.
Well, were you a goody two-shoes and stayed with the albums, or did you go down that dark alleyway and start buying the bootlegs?
I was never into bootlegs. Oh boy, I think the first bootlegs I ever bought probably were early 80s when I was a teenager. And they actually probably were purchased at Beatlefest. One of the things about being an only child is that I was somewhat sheltered, so I didn't venture all that far outside of my little world in the Bronx and find record stores that sold illegal bootleg records.
Yeah.
When I went to my first Beatlefest, which was in 1982, I was 17. My eyes were like popped out of my head when I saw the flea market and the marketplace and the vendors selling all of these records, finding these things that I had never seen before,
from like
and
different
not
countries
totally getting, not totally understanding what exactly these were, because some of these bootlegs looked legit, mm-hmm. and you're like, how did I never hear of this?
Like.
And I bought a few of them.
What's the name of the one that looked really, really legit? It was like, it predated rarities. Collector's items. That's,
I don't know that. You know what I think of?
What?
The Black Album.
Oh, the Black Album.
Now, the Black Album is the biggest pain in the ass to listen to. Because, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are hardcore Beatle fans, know what it is. It's the audio off the Nagra tapes, the film, mm-hmm. the Let It Be, the cameras. So you have all of the tones, and you have the cameraman's directions that are you can hear them with the music, and so a lot of times songs cut off in the middle, or the song is going on and it sounds great, and then there's a series of loud, piercing tones that are cues for other cameras, I guess. But physically, the Black Album looks great. It's a reverse of the White
beautiful.
Album, shiny black cover, poster, triple album.
Poster that
that
was
one of the. Yeah, it was done up to be a copy of. I haven't looked at it in ages. I'm assuming it's Let It Be, Get Back Sessions photographs done up like the White Album poster, and I haven't pulled that album out in decades.
Well,
but that was one of 3 or 4 bootlegs I bought.
Something quite rare on your hands, because that's a very desirable one these days. That goes for low 3 digits.
Oh, wow, that's good to know. Yeah, there was another...
I should have said that and said, it's not worth anything. I'll give you my address.
Wait, no, what I'll do is when later on, I'll tell my wife, hey, you know the value that's in these cabinets? But I think it was the first... I'm pretty sure since you mentioned bootlegs, it was probably the 82 Beatlefest was the first time I ever bought boots. I bought them... I think it was a McCartney called Suitable for Framing, I think.
Yes.
And there was a Beetle one. I don't remember the names. I don't know if there was 3 or 4 LPs. But what I found was, as I got older, I got a little more into audio equipment, and I got a little anal with my collections. I didn't tend to like to buy
mental
boots on
illness
vinyl.
known to us as audiophileness or audiophilia.
Yes. And I didn't like playing bootleg vinyl because I had heard a lot of horror stories about what they could do to your needle, your cartridge. But when CDs rolled around, the only thing that stopped me from going nuts with bootleg CDs was the price tag.
Yeah.
I'd drop $100 and sit down and look in the bag and see 3 CDs and think, that's $100 in here? These better be good, because I could have gotten, I could have bought. So, yeah, I've got a solid bootleg collection that has kind of appeared dribs and drabs, but I was never this maniac bootleg collector. It just seemed to be, I don't need another vice. It's bad enough what I do now with regular, legitimate, legal releases.
Oh, yeah. You fall down the rabbit hole.
There's bootlegs around, but
people start looking at you funny. It's like, how many copies of Rubber Soul does one need to own?
Well, it's endless.
Actually, I'll turn that question to you. How many copies of Rubber Soul do you own?
Oh, well, Rubber Soul, probably 3 or 4. One vinyl, the one that I got, which is an Apple from the 70s, that I got for Christmas, I think in 1974. That was my Rubber Soul introduction, and then I've got, of course, the 87 CD, and then at least 1, if not 2 copies or 3 of the most recent CD. I think the album that I've got the most of, I think I've got a lot of Meet the Beatles, because for some reason I was given people's copies. Darren, here, I'm going to throw it out. And I've got a load of Meet the Beatles. I don't think they're in great shape.
Yeah.
That's probably the album I've got the most copies of. Now you got me wondering. But only a handful of Rubber Souls.
Now I feel like, okay, no, it's me who has the problem.
Oh, no, you got to see with me with current releases. There are folks that think that we need there's meds for this, but I'm like, the McCartney 2 album, I'm not necessarily hell-bent on getting every colored variation, but I've got 4 on the way, and,
oh my God.
multiple copies of all 4 of them.
Which 4?
There will be 3 copies of the Coke Bottle Green from via Spotify that will be coming to my house. I got 1 or 2, probably 2, not the Third Man Records red vinyl, but the red vinyl that seemed to appear more recently.
Okay.
Okay, I got a couple of those coming in the mail. I've got a couple of white McCartney 3s on the way that I purchased from online from a couple of indie record stores.
Luckily, I think my mom, because I sent her the link with the caption, Christmas gift, question mark, question mark, question mark. And so I think she did pre-order the Third Man Red one in time.
Well, that's well, you know this. I mean, you know, of course, the yellow one is ridiculously rare.
Well, that's because Third Man screwed the pooch and put it up for like sale an hour before the announcement.
Is that what happened?
Oh, that's what I've been told has happened.
Because the morning of the announcement, I woke up and I looked on my iPad and I found out the official word on McCartney 3 pretty quickly, and immediately went over to Third Man, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! It's sold out already.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a day actually where I wasn't I wasn't on my iPad or on my computer all that much, and I didn't realize till later in the day that green would popped up here and there was a clear there, and you know, I was able to get the Spotify Coke bottle green only because a listener of mine on WFUV forwarded me an email to my WFUV email address. It just happened to come to me at a time when I was in my WFUV email about to record a show, and the email popped up, and as soon as I got it, I clicked the link and bought the copies and thought, nice, I missed out on what Third Man Records did, but I've got this green one. Little did I know Target was putting out the solid green, and that there was a red one that had popped up, and I also got the green Target CD. I'm not exactly sure why, but
is it bad?
And I have somebody that I've met.
Is it bad that it's kind of? I'm happy that they're doing it as a collector, but it's also, it kind of upsets me that they put out like all these variations all on the same day, that it's like, could you be any more transparent with...
Yeah, I could see, yeah, that's a popular argument, and I'm sure a lot of people listening have been involved in these arguments, these debates on Facebook and whatnot, about why it's done, and is
I know
kidding
why
me,
it's done.
and
it's done to sell
listen,
like several copies of the same album to bump it up on the Billboard charts.
Well, you know what? The state of the industry today and what it takes to sell records today, I don't have any problem with this happening. And if you are a collector like we are, if you're a collector like we are, and you choose to attempt to get them all, and the money's, you know, even if it is a bit of an issue, you feel it makes you happy, it gives you pleasure, knock yourself out, go get them all. If that's not your thing, fine, but don't criticize me because I'm trying to get as many of the colored vinyls as I could get. It's what I do. Yeah. I'm sure I could find plenty of things to hassle you about. You know, if that's not your thing, that's not your thing. I bought a couple of cassettes of McCartney 3 too. So there. Yeah. Damn it.
Well, I'm not hassling you.
I still haven't ordered the standard. I still didn't get the standard CD or black vinyl yet.
Oh, but what's the point, though?
Well, I would think, I'm still uncertain. You know, the common word is the colored vinyl audio quality is subpar to black vinyl. I don't know if that's the case.
Maybe it was in the 80s, but I don't know about now.
Some folks say, no, you can't hear, and others, of course you can hear. You know, when McCartney 3 comes out, I might pick one of the colored vinyls to crack open and play. But more times than not, I'll be going for the standard CD. Listen, I'm a big vinyl guy, but in my book, CD is the best way to listen to music for convenience, and I still think if they're made correctly, they can't be topped sound wise. But if I'm going to listen to vinyl, I probably, if I want the best sounding, I think I would feel like, put the black one on. Chances are that's going to be a little better sounding than the red one, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, now we're talking about records. I'll ask, what was your holy grail, record-wise? It could
Just
be
Beatles?
It could be one that you have or one that you're still looking for.
You know what? Maybe the first time I think that I spent a significant amount of money on to get a first pressing that actually was still in the shrink wrap. It was opened, but the shrink wrap was intact. Was I think it was a stereo. I don't think it was a mono. Sgt. Pepper that I bought for a couple of $100, and it was in pristine mint condition, first pressing from '67, opened. I don't even think there was much evidence that it had ever been played. And that, even though I probably have records that are more valuable, that maybe because it was the first one that I could remember where I made a major financial investment, something about the fact that I just had an album that was probably sitting in a record store in June 1967, and I own it now, and this is what it looked and sounded like if I was, more older in 1967, and I bought it as the brand new Beetle album. I actually have a goal of owning all of the Christmas records. Now that's pricey.
Oh, it definitely is.
And I have one that I bought, and
you're one ahead of me.
I have the 1968 record. And I bought it actually, I think, a couple of years ago, and have kind of like thought to myself, I want to try to get as many of them. I know the first couple, you're getting into rarefied air. But once I saw a vendor at the Fest for Beatle Fans had a complete set of the UK pressings. Mm-hmm. I'm joking now when I say this. That particular Sunday, when I saw the vendor, once I came back when I regained consciousness and got off the floor, from seeing them all in one place, I'm looking at it going, it made a few $1,000s, and I thought, I'm a big boy. I couldn't afford that today. I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I have, oh, hi, hon. My wife was with me. And she saw me, and I'm like, and it was like, no. Okay.
Well,
one day.
One day. For now, I'm at least happy with the box that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, very nice. That was a nice item. I enjoyed that, yeah.
Because I'm at least able to listen to them, and they will sound better than the originals.
Yeah, the Christmas messages I have a very soft spot in my heart for those things. I don't think I knew the Beatles had made those recordings. And one Christmas Eve, and I think I was probably a teenager, one Christmas Eve, and I don't remember what radio station it was in New York, but I was in the car with my family, and we were probably coming home from visiting or going to a relative's house on Christmas Eve. And I was just flipping around on the dial, and I immediately recognized the speaking voices, and it was like, what is this? That's the Beatles. But what the heck is this? I don't know what. And I don't think any explanation was given that night. I didn't hear an announcement, and little at a time, they'd start popping up on the radio, and then when I got to WFUV. When I started working at WFUV in 1983, 84, I think somebody at the radio station either had them transferred to reel or brought in a bootleg LP, which I recorded, and from that point on, knew them so well that I could narrate them like they were my favorite movie, the dialogue. And eventually got, bootleg LP of them, and then bought an original bootleg CD then, and then I got an original Apple pressing of the American version, which is one of my prized items. It's a pricey item, but not an overly rare thing to get. The Beatles Christmas album on Apple in the U.S.
I saw a bootleg once in a record store in Montreal. It was a bootleg of the British version of the Christmas album.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had. That's what I had first, yeah.
It was the From Then to You. And I was so tempted to buy it. But I didn't because I'm an idiot.
Yeah, that was... now that I come to think about it, I think that I found that somewhere, the bootleg pressing of the UK album, and that's maybe what I then brought to WFUV and recorded the whole thing on reel-to-reel for the staff to use, and put the leader tape between each of the tracks and wrote up little descriptions of each message. I did 2 Beatles specials at WFUV where I played all of them in a 1-hour program. Spilled a little over an hour, and I think that was in 2016 and 2017 maybe, or 2015 and 2016.
There are very
twice
few times
I did that
when we're in the car listening to the radio, something comes on, and I will fight anyone to the death who changes it. And it's around Christmas, and then the Beatles Sirius XM channel starts playing the Christmas messages. I'm like, nope, no one's changing this. No one's changing this. I'm listening to these Christmas messages.
Right.
You're like, but these aren't good.
They're special.
I'm like, I don't care.
No, to the untrained non-Beatle ear, no, they're not good. They actually sound like a bunch of goofy, guys, farting around with a tape recorder, which, well, actually they were.
Yeah.
Especially the early ones. But because it's the Beatles, because they're rare, they're not common. Even after they came out in that vinyl box set, the vinyl box set went out of print. I mean, you could still find it here and there, but for the most part, they're gone again.
Yeah.
Waiting for Apple to launch a big expensive box set on us at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Of course.
Where they're all on CD and there's outtakes and whatnot. But for now, they're not available. They're special.
Are there outtakes of the Christmas messages?
Yeah. There are. I mean, I have a bootleg CD that's got an outtake from one of the 1965 message, just one of them. And there's a lot of unreleased stuff that got cut that somehow these things survive and make their way. I haven't heard all that much, but, the early messages when the Beatles were loosely following a script that was written for them.
Yeah.
The stuff that they would clown around on, or maybe if they made an off-color joke or said something stupid that they didn't think was funny, stuff got cut out. And some of that stuff has kind of made its way out there. I mean, I only own a few minutes on this bootleg CD of, I think, the 65 message. And, of course, the full version of Christmas Time is Here Again. The full version of the song is also on this boot CD. It's like 6 or 7 minutes long.
Okay, well, that I think I do have on a bootleg somewhere.
So.
Yeah. I just always love talking about bootlegs.
Yeah, it's a whole... For every band, it's a whole other world. And I really... what I love and collect and what I appreciate is enough to keep me busy that I never really jumped headfirst into seriously collecting bootlegs. And I don't find today, when most of these things are digital and their downloads and whatnot. I don't find that particularly interesting. In fact, I'm one of probably, I mean, I don't know, maybe you are too, but I'm the type of person that will hear about a bootleg album from years back and will attempt to find a physical copy of it.
Yes.
I'm not interested really in files and downloads. That, just doesn't appeal to me.
Well, I'm not super big into bootleg buying wise. I love the history, but there are a couple of bootlegs where I have gone out of my way to buy them, mainly for the covers.
Right.
Last time I was in New York City, I picked up a copy of the Beatles versus the Third Reich.
Oh, wow.
And it's one of my prized possessions.
Right.
Because it's so ludicrous.
Let me ask you this. How often do you come into New York City?
The last time I was in New York was 2018.
Okay. Did you, and now you alluded to this, you've been to the Fest for Beatle fans in New Jersey.
Not New Jersey.
Chicago?
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I've only been once.
Okay. Yeah, everyone, like I said, I've been going since 1982. I've been to every single New York, New Jersey fest except for 2013 because I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I have a couple of bum knees from falling. The first time I fell on stairs in my house, I tore up my right knee.
Oh, shit.
Complete rupture of the quadriceps tendon, surgery, immobilized knee for months, therapy for months, and missed the 2013 fest because it was just going to be near impossible to get around alone and to get somebody to commit to being my nurse for 3 days in a hotel room
with no
guarantee that I would be able to figure out the logistics of a shower. That knocked out the 2013 fest, and then in 2019, just last year, I took a flop down another set of stairs and ruptured the quad tendon in the other knee. So they're equally destroyed. But knee injury kept me away from the 2013 fest, and that's the only one I've missed since '82. They started in '74.
Have you been to any of the Chicago ones?
No, it was always New York, New Jersey. I don't like to fly if I could avoid it. And not to sound pathetic, but I never really was able to find somebody who would come with me to Chicago.
Yeah.
Years ago, I used to go purely as a fan with a few friends. We used to stay in the hotel, and it would be like for 3 days, we didn't really get to do anything socially during the course of the year. It would be a little let down your hair party weekend. Mm-hmm. But over the past 10 years, I've actually started working at the fest, hosting panels, doing some emceeing, interviewing bands. So there's been more quote-unquote work and slightly less play. But, it's always been a case where getting to Chicago was never something that was convenient for me, and so I still haven't done it. And I keep saying this, one of these years I'll probably head out there.
Oh, you gotta.
Everyone tells me that's the fest. It's better than the New York, New Jersey one.
I can't say because I haven't been to the New York, New Jersey one, but all I know is I had a lot of fun at the Chicago one.
Yeah, they're very cool, and especially if you're with friends or with family members that are into the Beatles, and you got a little group, and if you're there for the whole weekend, it's fantastic. Usually by Sunday night, I'm fairly burned out for a variety of reasons, and I'm fested out, and I'm looking to go home and sleep for 12 hours. But I missed it this year that it couldn't happen. And I'm not even sure we're going to be able to do it in March when they've scheduled the next one in New Jersey, in Jersey City. But we'll see.
Well, we can only hope.
You might want to pause the recording now because my phone is ringing.
There we go. So I want to ask you now.
Sure.
This is where it gets fun and it gets opinionated. I want to ask you, what is your favorite Beatles song?
Rain.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not used to quick answers on this show.
Rain, and I'd say It's All Too Much.
Okay, man of culture.
And Your Bird Can Sing. Helter Skelter. Only a Northern Song.
Okay.
Obscure stuff.
You know what? You may be my new favorite guest I've had, because you said not only It's All Too Much, but Only a Northern Song, and those are two of my favorite Beatles songs. It's All Too Much may be my favorite Beatles song right now.
I think like any band that you're into, if you're really a hardcore fan, you eventually gravitate to the deeper cuts because, you know, let's face it, even the great songs that are hits. I mean, for the longest time, Hey Jude was my favorite, but even after a while, it was like, Hey Jude is one of the great records ever made. I've heard it enough for now. I'll listen to these at this moment. But I made, on the other side of that, a rather controversial statement on Things We Said Today last year when I mentioned that the first song I think of when we were doing a show on what we thought might be overrated. Mm-hmm. And I said one of the songs I like the least from the Beatles is Yesterday.
Okay.
Because the melody is, to my ears, fairly unexciting.
I don't blame you. That's one of my least favorites, too.
Yeah. We're the same person.
We are. That's why you've never seen the two of us in the same room. And if you have, it's just one of us moving back and forth really fast.
Really fast, right. Well, honestly, I don't move fast at all, so...
Okay. So
it couldn't be that.
It's me.
It's got to be magic.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite songs.
I was going to ask you what your least favorite was, but you asked that for me.
Well, Yesterday, and I never really was nuts, and I don't know why. Don't ask me why, but like Drive My Car. Don't get me wrong. Drive My Car is great, but something's got to sink to the bottom of the barrel. And for me, Drive My Car, Yesterday. The riff for Day Tripper's great, but that song is like, okay, I'm not a... Yeah.
Again, I prefer the B-side. We can work it out.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I'll ask you a kind of companion question. What's your favorite Beatles album?
Abbey Road.
Okay, again, another quick answer.
Yeah, there's no question. It's Abbey Road for me, and then after that, that's where it gets hard, if I had to rank them. I don't know if I could do it, and I don't think I would give the same answer.
Okay.
Twice. But for me, I think the best record ever made is Abbey Road. Period. Any band.
Fair
anyone.
Enough. I like to joke on this show that there's a correct answer to that question. I've been hearing Abbey Road a lot more, so I kind of have discontinued that bit. Mm-hmm. Because, in my opinion, the correct answer is Revolver.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can totally... A lot of people, and this seems to have happened in, over the past 20, 25 years, where there's been kind of folks leaning towards Revolver more than the other Beatle albums, and I totally get it. It's a perfect psychedelic power pop album.
Yeah.
But I think my love for Abbey Road was already so rock solid formed, which could also have something to do with it being one of my first Beatle albums, as we talked about earlier.
Well, I was going to say that. That was it was that and Let It Be and Hey Jude.
And listen, it's one of McCartney's shining moments. McCartney's my favorite Beatle. Don't get me wrong, I love them all, obviously. McCartney's my favorite Beatle, and that is about as perfect as rock/pop music gets, in my book, are some of the things on there that McCartney cooked up. especially in the medley, and you got Ringo even now by this point blossoming as a competent songwriter. I've always liked Octopus's Garden. Terrific song. Ringo wrote it. The second song he ever wrote that they did anything with. And that was pretty damn good and does not stick out like a sore thumb on Abbey Road. And Harrison was blossoming, as we all know, into the type of writer that, listen, he was as good as John and Paul, I think, at that time, or damn close. And maybe Lennon didn't have as many tunes on Abbey Road, but I Want You, She's So Heavy, and Come Together, it doesn't get any better. So for me, Abbey Road is perfection.
Well, I want to see if you're as opinionated about this. What is your least favorite Beatles album?
Probably Beatles for Sale.
Okay.
And that's only because I think the Beatles needed to, take a little bit of a break, and there's a little more, it went back to being some covers and original material. I think if you looked at all of the albums, the songs that people tend to gravitate to are concentrated maybe a little more on Beatles for Sale.
Yeah.
But then again, there are a lot of bands who would probably give up their firstborn to have Beatles for Sale as their best album.
Yeah.
And for the Beatles, it was just, maybe they didn't quite have enough material, do some covers, and that tends to be the one that sort of falls between the cracks. But growing up with the American LPs, I always felt slightly ripped off by Something New. That would be one that I'd say,
Well, is that because like half of the songs were on the Hard Day's Night?
Yeah, they had already come out on the Hard Day's Night soundtrack, and it was a weird choice of these other spare tracks to fill out a full-length album. And why'd you pick Home Give Me a Dinah Hand to be on side 2? It didn't belong there, and if you're going to pick that, why not see Liebdeek too? It just was a weird record, Something New, and I remember when I got it probably in the early 80s, and owned a copy of it and listened to it from beginning to end for the first time. It was one of the last Beatle albums that I actually owned. I thought, this one sounds like a capital cash-in.
Yeah. And now, here's the final question. What do the Beatles mean to you?
They're my life. They're the soundtrack to my life. They're the greatest popular music act in modern times. They are the premier rock act, solo or band, of all time. They transcend everything when it comes to music. I mean, you've got people, young people, listening to music that's 50 years old, and or
like yours truly.
Well, I just assuming, I don't know how old you are, but
I'm 18.
All right, so your 18-year-old ears hear something off of Revolver, and that holds up with something that today a band like Wilco might do, or Temples, or something like that, and these younger bands, I mean, it all starts with Revolver for a lot of these groups today, and there's no other band, no other act that's the case. So for me, I mean, all of the above, and the fact that, listen, whether together or individually, that was the soundtrack to my life. I can place events in my life back to what was the current McCartney solo single at the time, or what I was doing when I heard George's Cloud 9 album for the first time, or whatever. So that's it in a nutshell.
And now, here's the best part. I get to turn it over to you. What would you like to plug?
What do you mean plug? My show, like?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'd like to plug my radio show. WFUV is the radio station I've been at in New York City since, well, I did my first broadcast in February 1984 and have been there, for the exception of a few months, have been there ever since. So that's 36, closing in on 37 years. I've been extremely fortunate to have this career in broadcasting in New York City. It's a tough industry, and in New York City's it's a tough industry, but WFUV has, for those of us at the station, we're blessed because it's almost like an oasis from the broadcasting industry, and we've been able to grow in many different ways, individually and as a station. Like I said, been there since '84, was there through many, many changes over the years. In the '80s, the last years of it being a college station that belonged to Fordham University. It made a transition by the beginning of the '90s to being a non-commercial public radio station with professionals and students working side by side, which is pretty much, in a nutshell, what it is today. Not a college station. It's probably the second biggest public radio station in the New York City metropolitan area. And you can hear me right now, Monday through Thursday nights, 10 p.m. till midnight, due to the pandemic and the fact that everybody's broadcasting and doing their thing from home and broadcasting remotely. The logistics force me to wrap my show up at midnight after just 2 hours on weeknights, Monday through Thursday. But under normal circumstances, the show would continue to 2 a.m., and I fully expect that at one point, I'll be back to 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. But for now, it's 10 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Thursday night, Saturday afternoons 1 to 4. Not tomorrow, though, because it'll be 1 to 3, and I won't get into why. And WFUV is 90.7 FM in New York City. We still have actually an HD channel. 90.7 FM HD2 is an option to tune in. Listen at WFUV.org. Anywhere you can listen, stream online, download the WFUV app, listen there anywhere, and catch me 5 days a week right now at New York City's home for. We specialize in lots of new artists and lots of new music, so it's been a way for me to keep up with a lot of things that's happening in the 21st century.
And what about that podcast that you co-host?
I'm part of Things We Said Today with Ken Michaels and Alan Kozin. We do a show every other week, although I think we're going to miss a week this month. But every other week, Things We Said Today, Ken Michaels, Alan Kozin, and me, Darren DeVivo. I've known Ken since pretty much from 1984, when he was in his early years of working in radio. And Alan, I've gotten to know over the past couple of years. Alan at one time was, I think, the head of the classical department at the New York Times. Well-known writer who is in the process right now of writing what sounds like it's going to be the essential history of Paul McCartney. Volume 1 is supposed to come out in 2021. I think there's going to be 3 volumes to this thing. So Alan's the other host, and that's Things We Said Today. And in a nutshell, I just tell people, go where podcasts are and you'll find us.
Exactly. And now, let me try and do my spiel, which I'm still getting the hang of saying. All right, 1, 2, 3. If you're watching this on YouTube, which a lot of my audience is, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Please hit that bell notification icon so you get notified every time a new video gets posted. Occasionally other things go up on there, so you won't want to miss out. Like the video. If you have any feedback, please leave a comment. Or you can reach me at fansontheRunpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and yes, we are finally on Twitter. Fans on the Run has gone Twitter. And, as Darren said, you can listen to this show pretty much everywhere podcasts can be heard. So, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher. I don't even know anymore. There's so many. That was a mouthful.
And man, a quick plug for me. I neglected to mention, I actually have 2 Facebook pages. Darren DeVivo. The other one, Darren DeVivo, WFUV, DJ, Beatles podcaster, writer. Like one, friend me on the other. And I'm still kind of trying to devise what one page is supposed to be and what the other page is supposed to be. So just look me up and we'll be hooked up.
Well, there you go. And I just want to say, Darren, it's been... I've had a great time talking with you today, man.
Listen, Ethan, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad that we got to do this, and I appreciate being asked. And I am a fan on the run. And thank you. And hopefully we get to do it again. We'll have you on Things We Said Today next time.
Oh, I would look forward to that. With my other buddy, Ken.
So definitely.
Yeah.
Ken, yeah, absolutely. Ken Michael's good guy.
He's good people. But yeah, to everyone else out there, thank you for listening. You can go home now.
Fans on the Run is produced by Ethan Alexanian. Additional voiceovers by Richard Phillip. This has been a Showtown production.